Hello friends, it's Lisa and welcome to a new video. So today I'm going to be talking about my most disappointing reads and also my worst books that I read in 2020. These are the books that either disappoint me in one way or the other, or books that I just really did not enjoy reading this year, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about it with you guys. This is quite a popular end of the year sort of video, and I did it last year, and I thought it was interesting to kind of reflect on the books that I didn't enjoy, and I don't know, I just thought it was fun to talk about. I also do want to say that I already filmed this video once, and I felt like I was being extremely negative, extremely sassy, and I didn't want it to come across that way with this video. I didn't want to come across that way because I didn't want to seem like I was bashing these books or these authors or kind of the people who enjoy these books. I didn't want it to come across that way, so I wanted to refilm it and kind of come at a more reasonable, less sassy way. So with that being said, obviously I'm not trying to upset anybody, or, you know, if you have different opinions to me on these books, if you enjoyed these books, I'm super happy for you. I obviously went into these books hoping that I would enjoy them as well, so this is not me trying to bash the authors or anyone who enjoyed these books. I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about what books disappointed me this year. So yeah, let's just get into the books that disappointed me. I'm going to talk about like the books that kind of just disappointed me and would still recommend to people first, and then we'll slowly get into the books that I just really didn't like. We'll get progressively worse throughout the video. So the first book that I want to mention is one that I did a whole reading vlog for. I read this book and a couple of other books in that vlog, but I spoke about this one first, so I will have that video in the cards as well as linked below if you want to get all of my thoughts. But the first book I want to mention is Mexican Gothic. So obviously all of these books, the fact that I disliked them or was disappointed in them is a me thing. That's generally how reading and opinions work. It's a you thing. But I know that this one was particularly on me for my disappointment and my enjoyment levels of this book. Like, I know it was on me. So I don't really read horror ever. Any type of subgenre to horror, I don't read it. And I think because of that, I had certain expectations as to what this was going to be. I think I had certain expectations as to what makes a horror novel. I didn't know much about all the different subgenres and what different things meant and how things can be classified as horror. So I think that was where a lot of my disappointment with this book came from. I will say though that this book is not very long, and I did find myself being bored quite a bit throughout this book. I didn't find it was very interesting to me. I didn't find it very engaging. And the thing is that there's nothing wrong with a slower book, but I found that some parts were starting to get a little bit repetitive, so it was like it's dragging, but also we're hearing the same things over and over again. So it was just kind of like, okay, like when are we gonna get to something different? Like, when is this gonna pick up? I also found that there was a romance in this book that was completely unnecessary. I found it a bit weird, actually. Like, I really did not enjoy the romance that kind of came out of this book. I just didn't find it necessary. But yeah, I do know that a big reason why I didn't like this book is my own expectations and my own preconceived like ideas of what makes a horror novel, and just not me knowing about the genre that much. So I do know that a lot of people have had quite mixed feelings on this book. Some people hate it, some people love it. So I would think if you like horror, if you like Gothic horror, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I know that this was more so just a me issue, but that's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to get like too involved because I know that this was more so on me, and I did a whole reading vlog for it, so if you want to check out more of my thoughts, I'll have that link below. So the next book I want to mention is one that I was more so just disappointed by. I didn't necessarily dislike it, but I was a bit disappointed in it, and that is Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. So I read The Hunger Games for the first time this year. I know, where have I been? I don't know. And even though I didn't love this book as much as the first two, I still had a great experience reading these books for the first time. So again, I'll have those reading vlogs linked above and below. I don't want to just keep plugging my own videos. I'll just have a bunch of videos linked in the description. I think I did a lot of vlogs regarding a lot of these books, so anything you want to hear more thoughts on, it'll be in the description. But this is the third book in the Hunger Games trilogy, and basically, if you don't know what the Hunger Games is, I mean, I feel like most people know. I feel like I'm just very late to the party and I'm like the only one. But basically, in this dystopian setting, it's basically set in the United States, but instead of being separated by states, it's separated into different districts, and every year there's this thing called the Hunger Games. So a boy and a girl from each district is chosen to go into the Hunger Games. It's basically this competition where you either are the only one who lives and survives, or you die. Basically, it's just this brutal competition where you're trying to kill your competitors and trying to make it out alive, and there's only one winner. If you do win, if you are the one who wins, your district will get some help from the capital. It'll get some benefits because a lot of these districts are struggling after the war and everything. So yeah, there's kind of, you know, benefits to winning for your district, but it's a very brutal competition, and that is kind of where the story starts in the first book. And the thing with this book is, I think since reading it, I've, come to like learn and realize from other people who love this series that there are certain reasons as to why things happened, why characters acted a certain way, why certain things happened the way that they did. I understand a lot of the reasonings Suzanne Collins chose for certain things. However, I still was disappointed in this book. I really, really liked the first two, which I know the first two had, those elements of the Hunger Games and things like that, and they were a bit more, intense. But I just thought, even just in general, where the direction of the story was going with the revolution and what characters were trying to do and what they were trying to accomplish, going against the Capitol and all of that, I thought that that was going to be super interesting. And when it started to really happen in this book, I was disappointed. I didn't love the direction I think that this book took. I think I was expecting something totally different from what actually happened in this book. And again, I'm not saying that the things that happened or the way characters acted was, it didn't make sense. It made sense the way things happened, but at the same time, it just wasn't the way I thought this book would go. It didn't go in the direction I thought it was going to go. And I just, compared to the other two, it just wasn't as good in my opinion. I don't know if that means I was more entertained by the dramatics and all the death in the first two. Not that there wasn't death in this one, but I don't know. I just found that the direction that this story took, the last book in the series took, I just was a bit disappointed in it. But again, just because I was disappointed doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it necessarily. I mean, I gave this 3 stars. It wasn't, my favorite. I think I gave the other two like 4 and 5 stars. So I definitely didn't enjoy this as much, but I still think the series as a whole is super good, super smart. Suzanne Collins is a genius. It's still a series that holds up, and I think a lot of the discussions in this entire trilogy were really smart and really well done. So as a whole, I really do like the trilogy, but I think this is the weakest book out of the trilogy in my opinion, and I think compared to the other two that I loved, it was just a bit disappointing. So the next book I have to mention, I kind of feel bad mentioning right after the book that I just mentioned, but the next book is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, also by Suzanne Collins. Let me just put it out there, I don't hate Suzanne Collins. I like her writing. I think this whole Hunger Games world is super interesting and super, her writing is super smart, and just a lot of the things that happen in it are good. So I don't want you to think that I'm not into the Hunger Games, because I do really enjoy the Hunger Games. But this book came out this year, and that is kind of what kicked me into gear into reading the Hunger Games trilogy for the first time in the first place. I read all 3 of them leading up to this release, and I just feel so bad for the hardcore Hunger Games stans who might have been disappointed by this, because I was disappointed and I was upset about it, but I hadn't been a fan for however many years the series has been out, so I am so sorry if you are a Hunger Games fan and you were disappointed by this. So The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is sort of like a prequel to the Hunger Games. It takes place 60 or so years before the Hunger Games in the main trilogy happens, and we're following President Snow, and it's sort of like a villain origin story. The amount of times I had to repeat that because I kept saying villagin story. I was combining villain and origin and villagin. That's incorrect. But I think the fact that I even forgot about this book in the first place and that I read it this year says a lot about how I felt about it. I was kind of making my most disappointing books and worst books of the year list kind of throughout the year. Every time I'd read a book that I was just disappointed by, I'd add it to the list. And looking on that list, now before filming this video, I was like, oh yeah, I read this book. That is how unmemorable this book is. I did give this book a 3 stars when I originally finished it, but I think it's probably more like a 2 or a 2.5. I just found it so boring and unnecessary. I just feel like the whole book, it's just kind of at one level of excitement. It's very monotonous, and there's no exciting moments. There were some moments, but I feel like a lot of the more exciting or big plot reveals, things that kind of were bigger parts of this story, happened and then were over very quickly. And I feel like a lot of the other stuff that wasn't as important, or kind of the stuff that was dragged out and didn't need to be as long as it was. I feel like this book could have been a lot shorter and we wouldn't have really missed anything. It just kind of felt like we were at one tone the entire book, and it just was so difficult to get through. It was so boring to me. I kind of just felt like it wasn't really necessary. I think the best thing about this book was the background and the world building it added to the Hunger Games universe. We get a lot of insight as to where the Hunger Games started, how they came up with the things that happen in the Hunger Games we see with Katniss and the original trilogy. I think this is the 10th annual Hunger Games in this book, and Katniss is like somewhere in the 70s. So obviously there's been quite a bit of development, and we see a lot of those ideas kind of sprout in this book, and I thought that that was interesting. I thought we got a lot of insight into the world, but I feel like if that's the only thing that this book has going for it and the only thing that was enjoyable about it, it wasn't really worth it. Like, the interesting world building, the things that they added to the Hunger Games world was not enough to carry this book in my enjoyment. I just felt so bored. It was so difficult to get through. I had to start listening to audiobook while reading it because I would pick it up, I'd read like a page and just want to put it down, and just I couldn't focus on it. I was just having such a hard time focusing on this book. And so getting the audiobook and having to like listen to it while reading it was the only way I could get through this book. And obviously it is a prequel, so we know where President Snow ends up. We know he ends up becoming the president in the original trilogy, but there was no like consequences. Nothing was very high stakes because we know where he ends up. And it's hard because I've read prequels where I know where it goes, I know what ends up happening, but I'm still kind of like on the edge of my seat wanting to know what's going to happen, and I kind of forget that I know what's going to end up happening. And this book, it just didn't have that same effect. I just felt like the stakes when anything would happen were just not super high because I knew what was going to end up happening. And as it was a villain origin story, I feel like it could have been super interesting. It just wasn't that interesting to me. I didn't find it that interesting to follow him as a teenager and learn about where he kind of starts out and see kind of his growth throughout, you know, the time that we miss, even though this literally only takes place during like a single year. So we don't even see a lot of the growth with President Snow, but even then, like, it could have been so interesting, and it just wasn't. It just wasn't as interesting as I thought it was going to be. So yeah, unfortunately, this was a bit disappointing. I didn't really love this book. This is kind of one of those books I feel like you either love it or you hate it. I didn't really enjoy it. I can understand why certain people would like it, and I understand like why like a lot of the hardcore Hunger Games fans might enjoy it as well. I personally just found it a bit disappointing. So now we're kind of on to the last two things that I want to talk about, and this is where we kind of transition from like disappointing to I just really didn't enjoy these books. And again, if you enjoyed these books, I'm happy for you. I wanted to like these books a lot, so I'm just as disappointed as you are. And the first book that I want to mention is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. So I know that there are a lot of Sarah J. Maas haters and a lot of people who, you know, trash her books and trash the people who enjoy her books. I personally don't want to do that. I think if you enjoy her books, that is fine. And I actually read the A Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not like my favorite thing ever, but I did enjoy it, and I've actually been wanting to reread it. So if that says anything, I mean, it was fine. And now I might be tempted to continue on because it's now becoming like a series, but anyway, we're not here to talk about A Court of Thorns and Roses. We're here to talk about this. So yeah, I just want to say, like, I know this author and her fans get a lot of crap, and I'm not trying to do that. I personally just didn't enjoy this book. So this book is following our main character, Selena, and she is kind of this highly trained assassin. That's kind of what she is known for. And actually at the beginning of this book, she starts out in prison, and through certain events, she ends up being chosen to compete to become the king's champion, which I don't actually remember like what that means. I don't know if that's just like someone who will work for the king and will like do things for the royalty in like the kingdom. I don't know. I don't remember what it means, but there's a competition to become the king's champion. And if she wins, she will be able to get out of prison and become the king's champion. So obviously when she's presented this opportunity, she wants to take it because she doesn't want to live her life in prison. So that is where this book kind of starts off. And throughout this book, we're seeing this competition between different competitors, and also this murder mystery starts to kind of happen. A lot of the people that are competing for this role as the king's champion are getting killed off one by one. So that is kind of the general storyline, the general plot. And my thing is I found certain things in this book to be really interesting, but that was not the focus. I was really interested by the whole competition aspect. I love a good competition in a book. I just find it super interesting. I love different trials. I love seeing people have to kind of figure out what to do, and I just love that type of thing in a book. However, that was not really the focus. You would think a book where there's a competition to become the king's champion, there would be more of a focus on the competition. However, I feel like whenever we would see the trials, they weren't like a big focus. They would last like a couple of pages and then they'd be over. I think we saw Selena training for these trials and these competitions more so than we saw the actual trials. And that kind of bothered me. I wish we saw more of the competition. I just thought it was super interesting. It's kind of one of those things where a lot of chapters it would be like, and then there was this trial that happened and it was fine. And I was like, okay, but I want to see the trials. Obviously, we don't have to see every single one because I think there were quite a lot that happened. But like, I think we only saw like 2. And I just wish we saw more of it because I thought it was super interesting. I also really enjoyed the murder mystery aspect. I love a good murder mystery in a book. I feel like I need to read more books that are like murder mysteries, because whenever it's a subplot of a book, I really enjoy them, and I definitely think that it could have been really interesting in this book. However, our main character, Selena, didn't really start to care until 2/3 of the way through this book, and I just thought it was weird that she didn't really care until that far into the book, seeing as she was a competitor and it was competitors that were being killed off. I would have thought that she would have been a little bit more concerned kind of throughout the whole book and maybe trying to figure it out, but it kind of focused more on other things that I just didn't care about. I was like, people are literally dying, and that's what you're focusing on? People are dying, Kim. One of the things that was a big focus was the romance. Now, here's the thing. It's a Sarah J. Maas book, so obviously there's going to be quite a focus on the romance, and I kind of knew going into that it was going to have a focus on the romance, but I think there could have still been that subplot or the focus on the romance while still having Selena care about the people being murdered. It felt like she was more interested in trying to figure out her feelings or like see the different boys that she was interested in, because it was kind of a love triangle situation. It kind of felt like she was more invested in that whole thing, like the romance and her interest in these people and how she feels about them versus the people who were being murdered. I also feel like I didn't really care about the romance, which I do like romance in books. I like when it is a part of books, but I didn't really care because I didn't like either of the love interests. And I know that this series, like I think a lot of the love interests in this series kind of change as you keep going, so maybe I should keep reading the series and see what ends up happening. I have heard that the second book is very different and a lot better than this one, so I'm tempted to read the second book and see how I feel, but I just didn't really engage with the romance in this first book, and that did become a big focus of this story, which is not surprising because it is Sarah J. Maas, but at the same time, it was just hard to care because I didn't really like either of the love interests. Also, kind of going back to the competition, how we weren't seeing much of the trials in this competition, we were seeing a lot of training. Obviously, that did give us some insight as to how Selena was this highly trained assassin and her like abilities and what she was capable of doing, but I do feel like we were told that she was this crazy, highly trained assassin, so scary, everybody's scared of her. We were told that more than we were shown, and not that I expected her to be like assassinating people like left and right throughout this book. I just thought that we would maybe see hints of that side of her a little bit more than we did. And again, that might change throughout the series, but I just found that we were being told more than we were shown. And I think the different trials that we didn't see could have been a good time to show us her abilities. So that was kind of, I feel like, a missed opportunity. So yeah, I think just overall, the things that I liked about this book were not really the focus. It kind of became more about the romance, which again, Sarah J. Maas, to be expected. If I enjoyed the romance, that would have been fine. I just wish that, she wouldn't have introduced so many different things if we weren't going to be focusing on them. That's just my opinion. I wish we had focused more on the competition and like Selena trying to figure out the murder mysteries a bit earlier on in the book, but I don't know. Just wasn't for me. I might pick up the second book, like I said, see if it gets any better, but this first book just was not my fave. So now we are on to the final two books I'm just going to put together because they are the second and third book in the same trilogy, and that is the second and third book of the Carvalh trilogy by Stephanie Garber, so Legendary and Finale. So Carvalh is the first book in this trilogy, and I actually read this last year, and looking back on how I feel about this book and just like what I remember from this book, I really didn't enjoy this as much as I thought I did at the time. I think the characters were a bit bland, the romance was bland, the magic system, there wasn't one, and I just found myself to be kind of bored and just annoyed with this book. But at the time of finishing, I didn't dislike it strongly enough to kind of not continue. Like, I was intrigued enough when I finished this at the time to continue on, so that is what I did, unfortunately. So let's talk about Legendary first. I will give a little bit of a description of what these books kind of follow. So in the first book, there is this competition or like this game called Carvalh, and it's like this super mysterious thing. You have to be invited by Legend, who is this mysterious person. He's, a legend. No one knows who he is, but he has to be the one to invite you to this game. And our main character in the first book, Scarlett, has been sending letters to Legend, like basically her whole life, asking to be invited, and she finally gets an invitation. And once she gets to the place where Carvalh is kind of occurring and where it's happening, her sister ends up going missing. So she kind of has to play the game of Carvalh in order to find her sister. And that's just kind of what happens in the first book. I know this book has been described as like Alice in Wonderland-esque, and I definitely think that the magic system is a bit nonsensical in that way, which leads me to my first issue, is that the magic system doesn't make any sense. And a nonsensical magic system can be fine. However, I feel like the magic in this world would be explained by the author just being like, and we don't know why it happens that way, because the whole Carvalh thing is like a mystery and no one really knows how it works, and that's how she would explain why the magic worked the way it did. And it's just like, okay, it just felt like an easy out for her to have to explain like why she made things happen the way that she made them happen. And in Legendary, we're actually following the sister of the main character. In the first one, we're following Donatella. And to be honest, I found her more interesting as a main character than Scarlet because Scarlet literally had no personality. Donatella was annoying to follow, but at least she had something. Like, she had somewhat of a personality. Even though she annoyed me, it made me feel something other than just like bored. I also feel like the romance in this whole trilogy really is very like insta-lovey. Basically, the first person that these girls have met and talked to are the people that they fall in love with, and it's a bit cheesy and a bit ridiculous, while also the romance and like the love interests are just so boring to me. Like, there's nothing really special about them at all, which is kind of an unpopular opinion, I know, but I just don't find them that interesting. And to be honest, I know another game of Carvalh happens in the second book, but I don't really remember a lot of what happens in this book because it was just so like not interesting and a little bit boring to follow. And then the final book in this trilogy is called Finale, and to be honest, looking back, I don't really know why I read this. I think I read it because it was the only book left in this trilogy, so I was like, I might as well just finish it. But don't do that. Don't follow in my footsteps. If you're not enjoying a series, if you're not enjoying a book, you don't have to finish it. You don't. So the whole plot of the third book just kind of seemed all over the place. It kind of felt like the author made dramatic things happen to add drama to the characters and the story and everything, but it didn't end up really impacting the plot at all. Obviously, you don't want your characters to have like an easy road. You don't want them to get everything super easy. You want them to have challenges. I understand that. But it kind of felt like the characters would go off on this like little extra thing to kind of add drama, and then they would end up right back where they were because it didn't add anything to the actual plot, and then they would just keep going. So it just felt pointless. So there was a whole section in this book. We're following both Scarlet and Donatella in this book, so both of the sisters have a point of view in this book. And in one point during this book, Scarlet kind of has this like love triangle sort of situation, and it felt so pointless. It didn't feel like it added anything to the story. It just kind of felt like a distraction from what they needed to do. Like, it didn't really add anything, and I don't know why it was a part of it. Like, I remember finishing those chapters where that was happening and they went right back to where they were, and I was like, okay, what was the point of all that? And again, just this book, it kind of felt like the exact same as the first two. It didn't feel like the characters or the magic system or the romance or the plot, anything had kind of improved or there had been any growth. It kind of just felt the same. It didn't feel like anything was explained anymore or improved upon. So it was just kind of disappointing. I kind of wanted to keep going in this trilogy in hopes that they would get better, but that just wasn't the case. So yeah, unfortunately, the Carvalh trilogy was just not my thing. I really did want to like it. The whole concept sounds super interesting, and the first book, you know, was fine. I think looking back on it, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I did, but it was fine. And I know a lot of people love this trilogy, so if you are intrigued by it, if you are interested in it, I would still recommend picking it up and at least trying the first book, because I know so many people love it. I'm very much in the like unpopular opinion of this trilogy, so you might end up liking it. It might just be a me thing. So yeah, I just was very disappointed by this whole trilogy, and I just really did not enjoy really anything about it, which sounds so mean. I was trying to be less sassy in this video. I feel like this whole trilogy brought out the sassiness. But that was everything. Those were all of the books that disappointed me or I just really did not like that I read in 2020. A lot of these books I went into hoping to enjoy them. The Carvalh trilogy being kind of the only exception. I was just trying to see if it got better. But other than that, I did read all of these books in hopes that I would be enjoying them and that they would be something that I would add to my favorite books of 2020 list. Unfortunately, that was not the case. You can't win everything. You can't read all of the good books all the time. There's gonna be some disappointing ones here and there. So I just wanted to talk about it with you guys. I thought it would be interesting. If you have read any of these books, I would love to know your thoughts. I know some of these books are some of my friends' like favorite books or books that they have loved. So I'm sorry. But again, of course, I'm not trying to upset anybody or offend anyone. If you enjoyed these books, I really am happy for you. I wanted to enjoy them too. So it's very disappointing to make this video in the first place, but those were just the books that I was disappointed in, and I thought it would be interesting to have that conversation with you guys. But I think that that is going to complete this video, so don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you have not already. Also, don't forget to click the little bell notification to be notified anytime I upload a video. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.